What's up, fight fans? Welcome to Mr. Mustache MMA News. Today, I want to discuss the lawsuit that was just settled between the UFC Fighters Association, or like the Fighters Union, and the UFC. But guys, before we get into it, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to continue getting more MMA content by yours truly to help the channel grow. All right, guys, getting right into it. If you guys don't know, the UFC, they just settled with former UFC fighters, about 1,200 total UFC fighters. Some of the guys leading the charge, former veterans like Kung Lee, Nate Quarry, John Fitch, Cajun Johnson, CB Dalloway. They all filed lawsuits against the UFC back in like 2014, 2015. Pretty much citing unfair practices, business practices, freezing of contracts, being withheld, kind of monopolizing the MMA world. You know, not paying fighters a fair share of kind of what the company makes. UFC definitely is notorious for not paying fighters what normal big sports promotions would normally pay their fighters. A lot of them, the going rate is usually about 50%. The NFL, MLB, NBA, I think are about 50, 51%. As to where you got the UFC, where they pay out about 17% of the profits to the fighters. And with where the UFC is now these days, that's definitely a problem. And this is where they kind of have their athletes by the balls. And these, and especially when it comes to healthcare, because the athletes, they're considered as independent contractors. The UFC, they don't really pay out long-term healthcare for these guys, 401ks, retirements, all that stuff. And they settled $335 million. They paid out between those 1,200 fighters, I think. This is just what I believe, and if I am somewhat mistaken, please let me know in the comments. I'm not like, this is just over some of the articles that I've kind of read over, right? They were seeking over damages of $1.6 billion. I think they filed for about $335 million. And that may seem like a huge win, right? 335, that's a lot of money, but not a lot of clauses were implemented to protect the fighters in the future. Healthcare, 401ks, things like that, retirement. I think guys who have, if they had a clause where, if you're a 15 UFC fight veteran or a 20 UFC fight veteran, you get some sort of retirement, 401k, or some sort of like not like social security, but like some sort of retirement plan, or at least healthcare plan, to give you something moving forward if you've put in that much amount of octagon time within the company, right? If you're a guy who fought 3 or 4 times, I don't really see that being a thing, right? Guys being able to go out and seek other representations with other promotions, Bellators and PFLs, and the UFC, because they monopolize so much of it, they should be able to dish out more money to these guys. But with such less availability and option for the high-level guys, these high-level athletes, the market gets dwindled by what the UFC offers because they are the best promotion. They are the best in the world, and everybody knows that they are the best in the world. They know the best in the world, the athletes, the fans, everybody. But they don't really always pay accordingly, right? You hear guys that are over Bellator and PFL and even bare knuckle who are saying that they in one fight they're getting paid more than they ever did within the UFC their entire career. Corey Anderson over Bellator, Mike Perry over bare knuckle. I know Pettis was even saying he was making a lot of money over at PFL. So you see these guys going over there, they're making the big bucks in other promotions. As to where the UFC, like, hey man, if you want to be best in the world, this is where this is where you're going to go to be the best in the world. If you want to win a title, not be a millionaire, But the guys who do win titles and defend belts, they are millionaires. They do get the pay-per-view points in that aspect. But with this $335 million lawsuit, right, for me, it seems like a bit of a loss in that number. The UFC, they are a multi-billion dollar company. I mean, they sold for $4 billion now almost 10 years ago. And to see where they've grown, especially since the pandemic, right? I mean, the fan base has grown exponentially since the lockdown, right? So I'm really curious to even know like what the UFC is even worth these days. But so I feel like that number in itself is low. No real true union was formed out of this. There was no clauses to help these guys moving forward, no health care to help these guys moving forward, just kind of a payout. And it didn't even really, like, the UFC's even said it was like a tax write off. I think the TKO group, the parent company of the UFC, they're going to be, I think, going to be the ones paying that out per se, right? So, I mean, yeah, I'm happy that some of these guys are going to get their paycheck. Guys like John Fitch, Kung Lee, guys who have been in it for 10 years. I'm sure they're happy to have it over with. But I think long term, man, we're going to be having, I think, 5, 6, 7 years from now, there, there might be talkouts of a lockout, just like how the MLB, NFL, NBA, we might see that one day. And if some of these guys, man, if they get smart about, I know it's a fictional show, but if anybody remembers the show Ballers, where the Rock's character, he got all the players together and to go against the owners, they all posted on the social media X-rays of their injuries, photos of nasty hits that they had taken, all to show all the damage that they've taken for the league and what they have not received in return. And I think in a few years, we can see something like that. That can be something that could be a real possibility, a lockout per se, an actual strike. But in that MMA world, with these guys, it's such an individual thing. These guys who are fighting for their livelihoods, paycheck to paycheck, fighting only 3 times a year, 3 paychecks, 2 times a year, sometimes even 1 time a year for a paycheck. It's hard for these guys to put their foot down and say, no, I can't accept this money for my food, my family, for money down the road. That's the hold that the UFC has on these guys. And it's hard to watch sometimes. It is. As much as I love the UFC and I love the sport, I love the athletes even more because they are what make the sport. As much as the fans make the sport, the UFC is these guys, these athletes are the ones going out there performing and putting their lives on the line for our entertainment. Like for us, like so. I don't know, man. I'm conflicted on it. Like I don't know a whole lot, but like at base value in layman terms, right? I feel like I just feel like that they could have gotten more out of this, and it just sucks that they didn't have a bigger of a union and a bigger outcry of help and bigger support. But I don't know. Maybe I'm part of the problem too. Maybe we are part of the problem, guys. If we want our fighters to get paid, maybe some of us as the fans need to speak out more ourselves. So maybe we could start with something here. That's gonna do it today, guys. Let me know in the comment section what you guys think about this issue. If I got anything wrong, let me know. I'd love to. I'd please correct me. But if you guys liked what you heard, if you guys learned anything, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Help the channel grow. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Mr. Mustache, MMA news out. Let's fucking go, fight fans.